Hello and welcome to the 28th episode of When I Was Your Age, a podcast celebrating the careers, callings, and creativity of some friends of mine. I'm your host, Roland Parker, and as always, it is a joy, pleasure, and a treat to have you here. Today's guest is Wesley Bloome of WiseGuys Pro-Wash, which I'm really excited to get an understanding of how he got started with entrepreneurship, and just get a whole vision for that experience and what it looks like to run your own company from there today. Before we get started, I do have a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure that you follow the Instagram at WIWYA pod. And thank you guys so much for the support. We are currently at 1,189 followers. Love to update you guys week to week with the growth there. If you are listening for the first time, consider giving us a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. And if you are more of a visual person, like to watch some of these interactions, you can do that on YouTube as well. All links for those places are available in the link tree in the Instagram bio. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and bring Wes into the stream. How we doing? What's up with you?
How's it going, man? It's great to be here. Appreciate you having me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. Any Super Bowl plans coming up?
Yeah, I think usually I go to the same, Super Bowl party every year, like with my dad and some of his friends. And so I think this is the first year that we're gonna be changing it up and not going there, which I think will be exciting, but also kind of hard at the same time, Like you look forward to seeing the same people every year, and it won't be
Yeah,
the case this year. So, but it'll be good.
gotcha. Any predictions on results for the game?
I mean, it's tough. I really want the 49ers to win.
Mhm.
I kind of know the kicker on the Chiefs, not like on a super personal level, but we're the same age and we were both kickers and we would kick at the same camps. And so like we know each other. And so it's, normally I'm pulling for the Chiefs, but I just kind of think it'd be cool for somebody else to win.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. I love that connection too. I think about that pretty often with, just like the when you share the same spaces as, like, athletes that have gone on to do, really cool stuff, like they're excelling, at the highest level kinda thing. My story that I always tell is that I was not good at track by any means. So in the 8th grade, I was put in a randomized heat with Marlon Humphrey. He's a CB on the Ravens, super talented, super fast guy. And we were in a 300-meter hurdles, and beat me by a full 100 meters. So that was that was a real measure. I was like, golly, I can't believe that somebody like my age is so fast and like so equipped to just like destroy me athletically. Um,
Yeah,
it's
that's
cool
how it
to
was. That's how it was for me too, is that we would go to these kicking camps and I kicked in college. It's not like I wasn't good. It was just that like I remember I would kick a ball and it was like, oh, I hit that one well. And he would kick a ball and it'd be like twice as far and twice as high. And it was like, this doesn't make any sense, but it does because he's like one of the best kickers in the history of the NFL. Like he's just that
yeah,
good. And he's always been that good.
yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and I think the emergence of like Pat McAfee, like giving some like random people off the street an opportunity to kick, and say like especially people who have tweeted like, oh, I could do that, like I can't believe that he missed in this like crazy scenario. It's like, well, those kickers are they're the best. They were literally probably like the best in their state at some point. You're not that you're not as good as you think they are. The gap is much further
Oh yeah.
athletically from them to you than you're giving credit for. I love that. If you guys aren't already, make sure that you follow Wes on Instagram, and then we'll make sure to throw the link up for Wise Guys in there as well. If you guys live in the Atlanta area, if you need some cleaning done, we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But yeah, let's dive into some get to know you questions. So I want to know first of all, where are you from, and where do you currently live?
So I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and that is where I currently live. So I went, grew up
Nice.
here and then went to college in Tennessee and then that, started the company in that and then came back. And so, so yeah.
Excellent. And what do you do? Tell us a little bit about that.
So I am the owner and CEO of WiseGuys Pro-Wash. We are an exterior home service company, um, focusing on exterior cleaning and holiday lights.
Nice. I love the pitch there. That was a good succinct
Well, I have to
summary of it
get,
all.
I got really good at saying pressure washing company. And then,
Mhm.
everybody would give me a hard time because we don't just pressure wash. And,
Yeah.
holiday lights is now like one of our services. It's a pretty big, it's becoming a bigger and bigger piece of our services. So exterior home service is kind of the most accurate representation of what we do.
Nice. I love that. How old are you?
I am 29.
Nice. Love it. Yeah, it's funny too, the last what feels like 10 episodes, I've seen people kind of looking up and to the left, like, trying to do a little math on, like, how old
Well,
they
yeah, because
are. Uh,
I think I've been 29 for like 3 months. I think it is. Not fully 3 months, so it still kind of hasn't, set in yet.
yeah, I totally get it. It's very funny. It feels like this range right here is a really hard one to nail down just in terms of, like, where am I? How old have I been for a while? Um, what piece of media are you currently enjoying? So think book, podcast, music, TV show. What is that to you? Is there anything that you're diving into?
Um, it's a good question. I mean, I think that, historically it's been a big audio book kind of guy. Like that's usually is usually the go-to for me. But, here recently over the last few months, I haven't really gotten in the groove as much as I normally, I think last year, I think I listened to slash read like 50 books.
Mhm.
And I don't think I've read a single one so far this year. So like I got to kind of get back into the groove there. Fell off a little bit.
Yeah, I feel that. I I personally am, like, a little embarrassed of just the amount of reading that I do now versus, like, when I was, like, in high school. Would just, like, eat books. Like, I would just burn through them, like, so fast, and I don't know, like, I enjoy reading, but, I have a hard time getting to want to start. I feel the same way about hiking. Like, I love it when I'm doing it, but I it's almost never an idea like I should go hiking right now. It's funny in that way. But yeah, 50 books. That's incredible. Let's see here. What's something you'd consider a luxurious necessity?
It's a good question. I think for me, I think it's uh, I think it's the technology that you use. For me, I'm a big Apple fanboy. So I've got, the new iPhone, the new watch, the,
Nice.
I don't have the new everything,
Yeah.
but a lot of it is. And so I think for me, um, it's definitely luxurious, and I think but I think it's practical from the same time. Of like, if you look at, my computer is also fairly new, and so I think from a standpoint of like, what do I interact with the most?
Mhm.
These are the things I interact with the most. It's kind of like, why not have the nicer thing that
Sure.
could potentially, save me time or battery or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I feel you there, and especially when there's an overlap between, like, everyday, like, personal stuff and the work that you do too. So, yeah, it makes total sense. Any chance you'll be getting the Vision Pro, the VR headset?
I mean, I definitely think about it.
Yeah,
And like I definitely have thought about it. I don't know that I will want to get this one, but I'm one of the Gen 2, yeah, I'll probably get that. Like
yeah,
it's more a matter of
okay,
like I don't really, want to spend that kind of money on something that is I'm unsure of.
yeah,
I don't care to be a first mover. I just, so that's kind of what I'm excited for, like figure out all the kinks, figure out how to make it smaller, and figure out how to make it less expensive. And if they can not make it less expensive, that's fine, but just focus on the other stuff and I'll still buy it.
Yeah, I love that. I saw a clip of a guy wearing what seemed like courtside at an NBA game. I was like, What are you throwing up on on your HUD that you can? Are you like pulling out player stats as they're going around? Like I'm just so enthralled by that. So that's so it's so funny. Um, let's see. What do you have any bits that you're doing? And I kind of think of this as a running joke or humor that you kind of keep within yourself, almost like jokes that you tell, not really for the benefit of others, but also maybe inside jokes with those around you too. I'm interested to see where you take that.
It's a good question. I mean, uh, I don't know that I've ever really thought about that ever.
Uh-huh.
Um,
I'll give you an
I don't
example
know.
of one
Yeah.
for me. It if I experience something where there's like some comeuppance or like Schadenfreude for like somebody I see, like a maybe like crooked politician gets what's coming, or just like guy who's speeding past me, like gets pulled over by a cop. I just like kind of like shake my head. I'm like, shame. Like and like that. It's kind of the same response each time. Like that's what I kind of think of. Is it anytime that situation comes up, that's what I kind of immediately fall back into.
I like it. Yeah, no, I think at least maybe I'm just not aware enough to know what it is that I'm sure I do it. I just can't think of, what exactly it is that I do. I probably have to ask uh, Elena and be like, hey, what do I do? She
Yeah.
probably knows.
So
I just don't
there you
know.
go. It's yeah, we'll get some after feedback there. Um, so this next question we ask every guest, and we compile the answer into a playlist. So we've gotten a bunch of good answers so far. Um, Given the opportunity to replace the national anthem with any song on your playlist, what would that be? And tell me a little bit about that.
Um, I think that I would do the song that I would do is probably American Pie
Nice.
by I can't remember who. It's like a
The,
super long song.
yes, Don McLean.
Yes, that one.
Love it.
And that's what I would replace it with. It's pretty long, but
Mhm.
I think that it's pretty patriotic from the same standpoint of, unless I completely, I'm also not a big lyrical guy.
Sure.
For me, it's a more melody. Like, do I like the sound of it? I don't really even pay attention to what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
that song in particular, when I was in fifth grade, I used it in a speech. You have to do your oratoricals or whatever it is. And so that was my intro, was the chorus of the song. And so, um, I don't know, just think that could be it.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely get what you're saying too about it does evoke a certain sense of patriotism. Obviously, it's alluding to America like in the title too, but even the melody seems to there's something there that it's ethereal, dreamy. I get that. That's good. And then last get to know you question is how do we know each other?
We went to college together. So you were a year younger than me?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so went to college together, a year younger than you, and then I mean, I probably know your wife more than I know you in terms of that we did, we were both peer mentors, um, and I think that's how I met her, and then obviously y'all were together the entire time that I knew her
Right.
and you, so it was kind of a natural thing there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's funny. I love that too. The last episode was Kendall McCullough, so Alex McCullough's wife, which is it was cool to get her perspective because she's currently living on campus in Gamble because that Alex,
That's cool.
with that's what works in the residence program. So it's interesting to hear her have this perspective of be it coming from the outside, but then also, alongside the McCulloughs, they're so plugged into anything and everything Maryville College that she's got kind of the inside scoop. So it's a really unique perspective there. All right. Well, let's get into it a little bit. what you do. So tell me about Wise Guys. I just kind of as far back as you want to go and as general as you want to be. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so I started pressure washing as when I was in college. It was something that I thought of in my college dorm room my freshman year as a way to make some money over the summer. I was playing football at the college at the time, and so I needed to make as much money as possible over the summer, so that way I could go back and play football because you can't work for the football season. And so that was kind of where it started from. I didn't know how to do it. I had never done it before. Um, I honestly don't even know how I even thought of it, but I did. And so I started with a friend of mine and just borrowing a little Home Depot machine from his aunt, and that's how we started. I mean, it was so bad to the point that on the first job I didn't even know how to turn the machine on. We had to call his dad and be like, "Hey, Mr. Francis, like the machine won't turn on." And he's like, "Well, did you pull the choke?" And I'm like, "Choke what?" That's how we started. I mean, it was, and then we got the machine on, and I kid you not, we shot the tip off because we didn't put it all the way on immediately. And so it was kind of a disaster in the beginning, but you get a little bit of YouTube universe going, university going,
No doubt.
and you can kind of figure it out. So that's where it started, and then ended up, having the idea that maybe I can grow this and actually pay for my school. And so I decided after my second season of football, so after my sophomore year, to pursue the company full time and to try to pay for school. So then I started hiring other college students to help me, pressure wash and so forth. And then, unfortunately, I was able to pay my tuition. I'm probably like the only person in the history of Maryville College that has walked into the financial aid office and paid for an entire semester's worth of tuition with cash, because
I
that's
love that.
literally what I did. Like it was one of those things you look back on it, and you're like, man, like I probably should have just not paid it. I probably should have just gotten one of those governmental student loans, with low
Yeah.
interest. I could have put that money towards the company, but but yeah, so that's how it started, and then changed the name of the company shortly after graduating to what I perceived as more like professional instead of college student pressure washing because that was the original name. And then just kind of grew it from there. And so now we're, fast forward, we made the Inc. 5000 list, means that we're one of the 5,000 fastest growing privately owned companies in the country, which is pretty cool. We're the fastest growing exterior cleaning company, which is cool too. And now we're one of the biggest in Atlanta. So it's come a long way from the days of not knowing what the heck we were doing to now the equipment that we have now. I mean, I would have died for it back then. It's like
Yeah.
way different.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that sounds amazing to see just the difference too when I think about like how you started like calling up versus now when I like go and look at your website and seeing just the disparity there in presentation even. That's amazing. Um Tell me about Inc. 5000 because I've heard this before. Um, my employer, we've been on that list, but it's really great to hear and see that you've done that as well. So how were you contacted about that? Tell me about that.
So it's really a matter of it's not so much where they come to you. It's really more a matter of do you beat the qualifications. And so it's kind of like anybody can apply, but you have to meet certain qualifications. Like you have to do more than $2 million in revenue. You have to have grown by a certain percentage in a 3 year span. And so yeah, so it was kind of like I heard about it from somebody, and I was like, I really don't know that we're gonna be on it, but it's kind of like, why not try? Like worst
Yeah.
case scenario, we just don't tell anybody we applied and didn't get it. And so, I thought that, we'd probably be like in the 400s or 4,000s. And we landed somewhere kind of in the middle. I don't remember the
Wow.
specific number, but I think we were, kind of in the middle of the pack, which I thought was uh, even more surprising.
That's cool. That's gotta be really validating too, just like, here's all of the effort that I've put in, and to see like, all right, here is, how I've actually grown, and let's see how that stacks up to what they're measuring and what they're looking at. That's such a cool thing. Um, so what I wanna highlight is you mentioned just when you first started, you had the Home Depot equipment. How exactly how exactly does the business look different from when you first started? Like, what are the biggest things that you point to?
I think that, when you're first starting out, you're doing everything. So, you're um, giving the estimates, scheduling the jobs, taking the phone calls. I mean, I remember like getting phone calls and, I remember a distinct situation where a customer called in. I didn't know who it was, answered the phone, and they were like, I want to get an estimate. And I said, perfect. I said, I can come give you an estimate at some point this week. And she was like, well, do you know when? I said, well, I can give you a call when I'm on the way. And she was like, that's not going to work. I need to know a specific time. And I remember feeling like so crushed. It was like, I really don't know because I don't know what time we'll be done pressure washing this job. I got one after this. And, like I don't know. And so you go from there to where you're all alone. Like it was terrible. Like I'm not gonna act like it really was awful. It was one of the most miserable experiences. And they say that a lot of small businesses fail, right? The majority of them fail, and I completely understand why that is the case.
Yeah.
Because it's lonely. You're by yourself. Plus the fact that it's a lot of work, a lot of time, but it's the loneliness of being by yourself. I think kind of compounds it all to where you have you really start to think, and then you start to think. So I remember kind of in 2018, shortly after I graduated 2017 in May. I remember in 2018, kind of like every day it was kind of like I would ask myself like, do I really want to do this? And I would think like, how does anybody ever do this? How do you have employees? How do you tell somebody what you need them to do? Like it legitimately seemed impossible. And at one point, about halfway through the year, I just told myself, I'm like, you know what, Wesley, like you're either gonna like you got to make a promise to yourself because this whole like I could do something else, like that's not beneficial.
Mhm.
You either got to be all in. And so for me, what I told myself at the time, I think I was 22, and I said that until I'm 25, I'm not going to consider doing anything else unless this thing goes bankrupt. And it was like from that time that I made that commitment to myself, everything started getting a little bit easier. And fast forward
Yeah.
to now, it's not lonely at all. Now it's a matter of, there's an extra motivation because when you're by yourself, you can, if you don't feel like working that day, like you don't.
Mhm.
Now once you start having a team, you're not just doing it for yourself anymore. You have people that you're responsible for, and it just kind of makes the motivation, at least for me, it made it a lot easier. And there was less of the coming up with excuses for why I didn't want to do something.
Mhm.
Instead, it was kind of like, I have a responsibility to these people. I have to do it. And so I think that's an overlooked part of small business is that it's very lonely in the beginning. And, some people probably don't care, but for me, I'm used to being on a team, like especially sports wise.
Right.
I never did individual sports. And so that was kind of something that really was a challenge in the beginning.
Yeah, wow. It's great to hear the journey there. And sorry that you had to go through that experience of it sucking initially. Like but it's really cool to see the way that you turn that around and kind of double down on the fact that like, I'm gonna do this for at least this period of time. I know that it's hard and I know that it sucks. But I love what you said about when you adopted that mindset, everything became a little bit easier almost because of the commitment to it. Um, tell me, Tell me about the transition then in bringing people into the fold. Did you have difficulty delegating some of these responsibilities out?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's scary. You go from being in full control of everything because you're doing everything, so you're in full control of everything, to now, you have to trust somebody else that they're going to do it the same way that you are, which they're not. So you have to first accept the fact that it's not going to be exactly the way that you're doing it, and then realize that ultimately it's okay.
Mhm.
Like you're probably doing it way more than the customer ever even cares to have. And so, but I'll tell you a story, and that was that the first day, in home service, especially pressure washing, the big thing is getting off the truck. Like get off the truck. Like, that is like the first milestone. The milestones are like getting off the truck, probably breaking six figures in revenue, which isn't even that hard, but like it's still a milestone. And then breaking seven figures. Those are kind of like your three key. If I had to narrow it down to three milestones, those are your three milestones. And getting off the truck is typically where most pressure washing companies get stuck, is because, it's pressure washing itself is not difficult. Anybody can do that. And so when you're the one doing it, it's not difficult because you're in control of it. And so the first day that I ever had a crew go to a job and do a job without me being there at all. Because like there were times where I would go there, drop them off, stop by, like different things like that. I'm talking
Right.
like full on, they're by themselves, go to the job, come back. Terrifying. Because remember, they're also driving your truck with your equipment and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So I'm called, the day's over. I said my prayers all day long, and they finish the job, talk to the customer on the phone. The customer's happy, and like they we figured it all out. And so they're on their way back. They stopped at a storage unit that I had, dropped the trailer off, which is where most of the equipment was, and they're driving back. So the storage unit was about half a mile or a mile from where I lived, not very far. So I talked to them when they were leaving the storage unit, and then a couple minutes later, I'm on the phone with the passenger, and I hear that it sounds like he's far away from the phone. So I'm kind of like, what's going on? I hear a woman's voice, and I'm like trying to. Is there a woman in the car? Like both of the
Yeah.
employees are men. Like this, and then my phone dies. And this was
Who
like the old iPhone where you had to like plug it in, it had to charge for like 2 minutes before it would come back on. And so all the while this is taking place, I'm looking outside my window, and I see fire truck, ambulance, police
No.
cars.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'm like, okay, like this is not like, and so the phone charges up. I call the guy back, and he goes, Wesley, the Tacoma, it's totaled.
No way. Oh my
And I
god.
said, I said, what do you mean? And he goes, come up here and you'll see. And so I like go out my door. I was in a townhome community on like a somewhat busy road. Came up to the top of the hill, and there the Tacoma was, upside down, perpendicular on the road.
Oh my
And that was
god.
the only vehicle that we had in the company. And so it was, it was one of those points where you're like, do you really want to do this? And but fortunately, we had shortly afterwards, we sold our first job that was over probably $1,000, and it was $30,000. And so it was kind of like, that's just part of it. Is it's this big like roller coaster of highs and lows, and then you eventually are able to kind of even it out, or at least you try to.
Yeah. Wow. Gosh, that's so hard because in that moment you wouldn't have had the foresight to know like where you are now of like what are the things that I'm gonna need to know. That's got to be such a terrifying thing, especially when you're fumbling to like get your phone charged and like watching everything happen. I'm like a little bit sweating like thinking about that moment right now. That just seems so awful. Like I hate any kind of appointment where that's required for like I don't know, just like general or unforeseen like car maintenance, and like, I don't know, totaling a vehicle. It's not happened to me, but it seems just like one of the worst things that you can go through, and to have it
Well,
like
the thing that you don't realize is that like you when something happens like that, you have to still go back to the car once it's in the junkyard. Like once they haul it back, like you have to go there and get any belongings. And so it's like this surreal thing where you're like reliving it and you're like checking the glove box and you're taking out. And it's just, yeah. So that was what stood out to me too of like, wait a second, like I have to go back to the car. Like I thought it just kind of went away,
yeah.
like
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's crazy. So, wow, and that I can already picture when you've got just so much emotion and so much energy tied up in the business, and it's a part of your identity. At that point, when you're first starting to kind of hand off some responsibility there, that like that's like your worst fear is like somebody it's like happening to somebody else, but like also to the company. Um, what did you do from there to help kind of grow that sense of letting others take responsibility or have some agency?
I mean, I think part of it is just understanding that it's part of the game, that like you can't control everything. And it wasn't my guy's fault at all. They were not at fault. Somebody else was. Unfortunately, that somebody else didn't have insurance. So it's,
Ay.
the way that Georgia is set up, um, my insurance did cover it. So it's not like but it didn't cover everything, like
Mhm,
the ladder on top and the equipment in the back of it. Like, it was still a financial hit. And I think it's just a matter of like, just like when you're a kid and you fall down, you just got to get back up. And I think that, the, all of the negative, there's way more from lawsuits and other total vehicles and, and like all kinds of, there's way more adversity that, that has come up since then. But I think ultimately, you just realize that, you know, you can't have the positives without also having negatives too.
mhm,
And it's like ultimately, it's still a privilege to get to be able to be in a country, to be able to start a company
yeah,
and, be in control of like, it's just, I think ultimately, whenever there's those situations where the adversity hits, it's just kind of focusing more on the gratitude piece.
mm,
And it can always be worse. And as long as you try to learn something from, like we had another example is we had a vehicle not quite get totaled, but it was like right on the line this
mm,
year, and the vehicle was 2 weeks old, and we did not add it to our insurance policy.
oof,
And we have a fleet policy, so like because we have at this point, I think we have 20 vehicles. And so it's like it's not that we didn't have insurance, it was the formality that we didn't say this vehicle needs to be added to our insurance policy.
mm,
And that alone cost $25,000 that we had to pay for, you know.
oh,
But it's just it's unfortunate, and it was a mistake on our end. Um, one of my managers made the mistake of not doing that. And, but again, you just try to look at it from a standpoint of we had three other vehicles that weren't on the policy either. And so at least now, we know, and it's going to be something that we're going to put a process in place to make sure it takes place going forward. So
yeah,
it's just a matter of not making the same mistakes twice and, ultimately not beating yourself up when they happen because they will happen.
yeah, I like what you said about, yeah, identifying that, all right, what can we do to prevent something like this happening in the future? I imagine that that is a lot of small businesses experiences. They don't have a standard operating procedure for some of these things, enrolling a vehicle in fleet insurance, or, just what other preventative measures that you might have a system in place. just because you don't have the experience yourself, and also you haven't run into those situations before. So like thankfully, like you can hopefully apply that pretty early on, as a young company, and then prevent a lot more damage in the on the front end. So it's a great perspective to have. It's hard to feel that way in the moment, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is, but it's kind of like, it's all a perspective thing. It's kind of like, regardless of how you respond to it, it happened, and you can either choose to dwell on it and be, upset with, feel sorry for yourself, or you can continue to move forward. And I think
Mhm.
that that's kind of at least always been my mentality through the process is that, it's not going to be the first time that something doesn't go our way. It's not the first time that something doesn't go our way. It's not going to be the last time something doesn't go our way. But let's make sure it's the only time in this circumstance that this happens.
Yeah.
And and we'll be fine.
Love that. Yeah, that's great. Great perspective to have. I think that's the best way that you could roll with it. Um, I'd be really interested to hear what resources affect the way that you approach your business. So, are there books that you look to, conferences, um, other mentors, even what has had an impact in the way that you carry yourself as a business owner?
A lot. I mean, it is definitely, it's not just a one thing. I think that's a big misconception too when people start thinking about, they want to start a business and it's almost like, well, I don't know anything. Well, nobody does when they start. So it's a matter of like, how do you solve for that and how do you get the information that you need? And so, I was the weird kid in college that, my entire, you remember J term, it was like a 3 week period for those who don't know, where you have one class and it's from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. and that's all it
Mhm.
is. So in J term, my senior year of college, there was a particular industry magazine. It was called E-Clean magazine. It doesn't, it's not around anymore. So if you're a listener and you remember it, unfortunately it's not around anymore, but it, that's what I did the entire semester, this ethics class. I just read industry magazines after industry magazines on my computer. And, I think I got a C in ethics, which is, I feel like kind of impressive because like, how do you not do, there's no right answer, like
Yeah.
it's kind of like you just do the assignment. And so that was one kind of where it started was, I just try to find industry magazines and figure and read them and start to figure out like, okay, who is popping up in these industry magazines? That's the beautiful thing about it is like whoever's on the cover knows more than you do, most likely, at
Mhm.
least early on. They definitely do. And so you start seeing trends of, who these people are. So then you combine that with going to events like seminars, industry events. And so all you have to do is go find the same people that you've seen on the cover multiple times because they have to be doing something right. And then you just go talk to them and eventually, become friends with them. And so that's literally my exact playbook. And the two companies that were on the cover the most, I'm friends with their owners now. We're bigger than one of them now, who ironically enough actually called me today. And then the other one, they're still bigger than us, but we're like the gap is getting closer and closer. They're in Florida, and so I think that going to industry events is big, but I think you have to know what you're looking for. I think a lot of people they go to industry events, it's like you're there to learn, but you're not really there to learn. You're there to meet the people that know.
Mhm.
There's I've learned a lot more. A lot more mentors and friends that have helped along the way that you meet at these events, that allow you to kind of, that's who you're calling when these different pieces of adversity take place. Is you're like, hey, has this ever happened to you before? And you're able to kind of, so, that book's big thing. When I was out pressure washing, like there was one year where I read 80 books because while I was out there spraying water the whole time, like why wouldn't I just listen to a book at the
Yeah.
same time? Like that's kind of, why not? I'm getting paid to exercise, get a tan, and get an audiobook in. And so books has been a big thing. I've also, have various coaches, and I've gone through various coaching programs. And I think that's one thing that you can't be afraid of doing is spending money on yourself. There's no
Mm.
better investment that you can make in yourself, because you can't, I mean, that's all you really have ultimately. It's kind of like if something happens to you, like every other investment's gone too. Like it's not like you put money in the stock market and something happens to you, you're not around, like you're losing no matter what. You might as well put it in yourself. And so,
Yeah.
like this, like the shirt that I'm wearing right now is actually from coaching group that I was in a couple years ago. That was $40,000 to get in.
Wow.
And so you look at it, there was, right now there's, I'm probably spending like $65,000 a year on consultants and coaches. I've got one consultant right now that makes $500 an hour, and I have another consultant that makes $900 an hour, which is wild. Do you think that
Yeah.
you're talking to somebody and you're paying them $900 an hour? But this is also somebody who was the CEO of $2 billion companies,
Hmm.
who, like when I saw him at his house, he lives in the same neighborhood as Patrick Mahomes. And when we
Probably
went to
doing
his
okay.
country club to have dinner, he dropped me off at my hotel in his Bentley. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like,
All right.
I probably should listen to this guy. Like
Yeah.
it's probably worth, paying up for it. So I think that's a big kind of a big thing there too, is that YouTube's great, and YouTube definitely played a big part of it. But ultimately, you have to be willing to pay money to be able to expedite the process and shorten the learning curve. You don't have to, but I know for me, I knew that I didn't want to pressure wash myself. I knew
Hmm.
that from day one. And so I mean, I was, quote, off the truck like in the first year, because for me, it was not an option.
Yeah. Gotcha. I love what you said too, kinda bringing back the YouTube University piece of like, yeah, like that's great, and like it's so important from the beginning, to be able to like figure things out, like how do I start a pressure washer, where's the choke, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But but yeah, it's gotta be really intimidating, to look to some of those resources when there's that barrier initially of like how much it can cost. But I love that you're advocating for it because you've seen the ways that it's changed your business and like the way that you approach things.
I
Um,
mean, like when we were in college, my senior year, at the same time that I was, getting a C in ethics class, which by the way, I graduated with honors. I only had like two C's in the whole time that I was in
oh,
college.
but
It's not like that was normal for me. And so I remember then I bought a $600 course, and it was a guy that I'd never met before, and it might as well have been $40,000, because at the time it was. And so I think that's the other thing too, is that it's not just a matter of how much, like it's different for everybody, in terms of where you are. I mean, for somebody, spending $10 on an audiobook, is of the same scariness, as hiring a high price consultant. So I don't say that from a standpoint of, like, it's all relative, but you have to be
yeah,
willing to get uncomfortable, and eventually it gets less and less uncomfortable, as you get more and more used to the investment and you see the payoff. I mean, it's kind of like, if you're going to make that kind of investment yourself, like, you kind of expect a return, just like any other investment.
yeah, absolutely. I knew that in making the podcast that I was gonna have to get a mic, and I was like, it was kind of a just a tough time for us like financially. Like there was just like a bunch of like different unexpected expenses, and I was like, man, do I like I'm not gonna be making money on this thing. I'm not even sure necessarily that that's something that I want as a goal for this podcast. But I know that at a bare minimum, I don't want to sound crappy. And like I just wasn't willing to like do it with like my computer audio, and it was tough to like make that, and way different than as a very expensive course and consultant. But but I think it's something that you're going to experience no matter what you're doing. Is like, in order to, I'm sure you experience it with upgrading your equipment and expanding your fleet. Like there are there are ways to improve, and they're probably going to cost stuff. And um, yeah, it stinks when you have to rip the band-aid off and go for that stuff for the betterment of the product that you're producing or the things you're creating and stuff like that.
But I mean, you mentioned that this was like, episode 28 or whatever it was. I mean, think about it, that's a lot of episodes. I mean, that's a lot of time that you put in. And, you made that commitment by getting this mic, like you're doing this thing, and I think that it doesn't matter what it is, there, as I think the key is for everybody just continuing to push themselves. And it's like, I'm sure that you've learned a lot in this process, for
No
yourself.
doubt.
And, it's like, I'm sure the people that you've had on the show, could charge for the time that they're, I got a guy that like hit me up and he was like, hey, I'll give you $1,000 to, if I can talk to you 1 hour a month.
Wow.
And I said, no. I said, no, I don't want to. I said, and it wasn't because, the money wouldn't be good. It was just more from a standpoint of like, I'm just like this, I'm tunnel vision, like
Mhm.
I've got my thing, and that's what I'm, you might as well tell me you'll give me $10,000. Still will say no, because, that's, I have you remember my contract I told you when I signed when I was 25, or when I'm up to 25. Well, I have another contract that I'm working on for myself, and that is a potential exit in the next couple of years. And so it's like, I'm not going to get distracted over
Right.
anything else when this is what the goal that I'm working towards.
Yeah, I love that too, of like having that mindset for the future. And like maybe in the future there is some kind of mentoring or consulting or something that you do. You could find yourself in a similar position to those that you've described that have helped you think about things in a new way. I a little bit, I wouldn't quite call it like a sunk cost fallacy either. Like it there, but there's like kind of a that feeling of like, all right, I've spent the money now. I should be a little bit more bought in, and now there's some ease of access, or like the product is better, or like there's I can do things a little bit easier. So I don't know, like there's something that switches in your mindset too when you've spent a little money. Obviously, if you're down the hole, don't make it worse if it's not going to work out. But but yeah, I like the thought too of like, if you're gonna be serious about it, like just spend a little bit of money. Like you can improve and grow yourself and all that stuff. That's a great thought. Well, tell me then about conferences and panels and things like that. You mentioned kind of being singularly minded. Um, but I feel like I've seen you do some of these events, or like going to alumni stuff. Like tell me about that. Do you feel some level of importance going to these things and helping out others, giving them perspective?
Yeah, I think that, ultimately what it is that, when you think about when you're starting out, you're going to these events, and the speakers at these industry events are not getting paid to do it.
Mhm.
They're essentially volunteers. Some of them are selling a product or a service, so they have more of a vested interest. But when I think back to like some of the people that I learned the most from, they weren't doing it because they had anything to sell. Like they were just doing it to give back to the industry. And so that's kind of what I do too. So it's you know, I've spoken at all of the largest industry events, and again, like industry, like this is like one of the smallest industries in the world. Pressure washing is not like tech. It's not like
Sure.
I'm,
Yeah.
giving a TED talk. So it's not very impressive when you look at the fact that it's pressure washing, but it's still a standpoint of of giving back. Because if at some point you can't just take all this knowledge and then all of
Hmm.
a sudden, you're not going to pass it down. That's part of like parenting, right? Is that, you learn a lot growing up, and now you, as a parent, you now have the opportunity to share some of that knowledge and pass it down to the next generation. And ultimately, they can hopefully have a better life, than and I'm speaking as if I'm a parent, but just for those, I am not a
Sure.
parent right now. So it's, we're not there yet. So so I think that, for me, whether it's the industry and kind of speaking at these events, and I do it very much so. It's kind of like, if you want me to speak, I'll speak. And if you don't want me to speak, that's fine. I just
Mhm.
won't go. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like, what, if you want me to be there, I'll speak, but it's not really worth the financial investment for me to fly there, get a hotel, just to attend.
Right.
Like, the
Yeah.
ROI is no longer, like, I told myself that I would go to every pressure washing event. There's three big pressure washing, and they're not big, but there's three events every year with three different organizations. I went to the same ones, all three of them every year, until there was a point where I felt like I wasn't getting a return.
Mhm.
And we're at that point now, and that's part of why speaking kind of, it's like, okay, well, now I probably should be the one to give back. And then, yes, I'm on the college, Maryville College is alumni board. And I think that's kind of a similar thing too, where it's like, Maryville is not where I wanted to go. I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to graduate from there. I think it's ultimately what I needed. And I think that it
Mhm.
really helped me kind of become who I am now, even though it wasn't cool or what I really wanted. And so I think that, why not give back? I'll be honest though, I'm kind of getting more and more to a point where I'm starting to want to just throw money at stuff and not time. Like, just to be like I am not planning on renewing my uh, alumni board membership
Sure.
after it expires this year, and it's just more a matter of like, when I do something, I want to really do it, and it
Mhm.
becomes distracting. It's kind of like you start losing focus, and so I prefer it, at least at this chapter, to to be able to make financial contributions at a high level, and be able to help the college that way instead of the time piece.
Sure.
So I think that, so yeah, I think it's managing, helping others, and also, doing things that you're passionate about.
Mhm.
And I know that for some people, it's their church, or it's their kid's school, or it's, whatever the case may be. I think it's important to, to give back, and, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I love a little bit of what I'm hearing too is just there's an element of almost a love of the game kind of component. Like, I've not maybe not the equivalent of like teaching or coaching like 5-year-old like t-ball team, but like there's something like that where you're helping and you're being a resource. But I also like what you said about like for the moment like in this season. um the element of, being on the alumni board, like, that's great, but I've gotten to a point where I don't think that I'm putting my all into this, and I'd rather be, putting my all into it in a different way or putting my efforts somewhere else. Just because, I think people can tell, it when that's going on, like, if you're removed from it or um, not not giving everything that you've got in that way. But yeah, I like that a lot. Kind of speaking to that, what impact have you seen yourself making? Just I imagine that you're very much a part of the lives of the people that work for you and are on the team at Wise Guys. But I'd love to hear what else kind of speaks to you there. What impact have you seen yourself making?
I mean, I think really what you realize is that, and this isn't just, me specifically, but I think it's a matter of, under we all have like a vision for ourselves of like, this is who I want to be, this is what I'm, where I'm going, this is kind of who I want to become. I think it's easy to lose track of who you've already become,
Mm,
and that you're already, you've already overcome obstacles that other people haven't.
mm,
And so I think that, it doesn't take a lot to change somebody's life. And I recently spoke at my childhood school. They asked me to come and speak to their seventh grade class, which I thought was cool because like that was not one that I reached out to them about. Like they reached out to me.
Mhm.
And when the teacher, it was a teacher that I knew was there when I was in school, which is, I mean, at this point, we're old enough to where like that's, you know, 15 years ago, I guess, whatever it was.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And so he, longer than that, I think it might have been 20 years at this point, but either way, as he was introducing me, he said, he goes, and, I remember my first day that I came to the school, I was shadowing one of the teachers, and I shadowed Wesley's teacher. And, Wesley was in that class. He goes, Wesley, do you remember that? I said, no. He said, yeah. He goes, Wesley was uh, actually went out of his way to talk to me and like, and gave me insight on the school from a student's perspective. And it really played a big part of me deciding to take the job. And he's like, do you remember that? And I'm like, no, I don't remember that. And it's just funny how some of these like very um, unimpactful things to you, the impact that it might have on somebody else. And
Mhm.
so I think that, I have people that reach out to me on a daily basis, um, to be honest, of people that I don't know. And I don't really have a big, I'm not a big social media guy. I don't even like texting. Like I'm kind of like
Sure.
when I am with you, I am with you.
Yeah.
And like that's the only place I am. I'm fully engaged on kind of what is right in front of me. And, um, and so I'll respond to these people that I don't know who they are. They're people that have pressure washing companies, that have seen me speak at one of the events or whatever, and they'll ask a question. And, and to be honest, I don't even know who they are. I don't know their name. And it'll be crazy how, you'll have somebody will come up to you at one of these events and they'll be like, hey, I'm so and so. I'm like, hey, it's nice to meet you. Like, do you remember like a few years ago, I asked you about this thing and you told me this. And so I went out and did that. And man, it was like one of the best things I've ever done. I'm like, and it's like you don't even remember it. And so I
Mhm.
think that's the big thing from an impact standpoint. And so I'm trying to be really intentional about um, about treating everybody with respect
Mhm.
and trying to be cognizant that we don't know what's going on in other people's lives, and that sometimes it's as simple as just being friendly with somebody
Mhm.
that could legitimately 15 years later he's the vice president of the school. And yeah, it's kind of cool
Yeah. Gosh, that's so yeah, that's so incredible, and it really speaks to me a lot.
because you
It's
were a
when
big you were a counselor for years, and I'm sure like you don't even know
yes.
how many kids you've changed their lives without even you even knowing.
Mhm. It's okay, I'm really glad that you mentioned that because that was very much where my mind went because I had a similar experience when I was a camper. I had this, it was, like, my last year, like, of being a camper, and, like, the next year, like, I would have been too old. I could be, like, on staff, like, if I wanted that kinda thing, and I was, like, walking with my counselor, like, down to the dining hall or whatever, and, I a it he said, like, "You should consider, like, being like, coming on staff next year, being an LIT," like, that sort of thing, and I hadn't really, like, thought about it before, but it stuck with me, and then I came the next summer, and I did, like, 7 summers at camp, and it was, like, a really integral part of who I am and why I went to Maryville College and how I met my wife, and, it's all of these things, and he came back to camp one time when I was there, and he didn't remember, and it was such an amazing thing. It was like it was so important to me, but it almost in a way, I think there's a certain magic to that of like. he didn't know how important that moment was to me, but he still showed up in that way. So even though there's, I don't know. I just there's something that I really like about that, and I feel for the way that you described that situation, with the teacher and other people that have approached you too. And it's I don't know. There's just something amazing about that, and it really
Like one of the things that like I always, when I'm sharing the story and so forth, it's always like, I don't know how I thought of pressure washing, right? Like that's like what I say, but it's not actually true. Like it's not the full story. The full story is that when my dad owned a rock climbing gym in Atlanta, and I worked there, indoor rock climbing gym. And I know like to climb, or you're familiar with and so I used to belay for people. I was a quote instructor, but really all I was is I was just a belayer. I would just belay
yeah,
people that would
fair.
come in, and and they would climb, and I would just make sure they didn't die. And so one of the things I would always, and so it would always be me and then six random people. And for 2 hours, my job is to make sure they have fun, keep them safe. But I would also ask them what they did for a living. Like I would try to ask them questions, and I was younger, and looking back on it, like probably not the most appropriate thing to be asking every single person what they do for a living. But I did it, and I would keep mental notes. And there was one guy who pressure washed. That's what he did. And I remember him still, like what he looked like. I don't know his name, obviously, because 2 hours, is not
Yeah,
enough time. And I remember him telling me about pressure washing and how, there's a lot of money in it. And I was kind of like, oh, so like you own the company? No, no, I don't own the company. It was a guy that worked for a company that did a lot of Walmarts and, industry, like more commercial cleaning that happens
sure.
overnight. And that I never would be doing what I'm doing. And he didn't even say like you should do it. It was just like that. That's
Yeah.
what came to me was
Wow.
when my friend and I were on the phone trying to figure out what we wanted to do over the summer to make some money. And he said landscaping. I said it's not going to work. Everybody already has a landscaping service. They're not going to fire the landscaping service
Mhm.
for two college kids to work over the summer and then leave them out to dry and they go back to school.
Yeah.
He said it's a good point. And he said, what do you think we should do? And I don't know why, but I remembered from like 3 years before pressure washing. And so
Gosh,
it's
I love that.
again, it doesn't even, and it's like, and so it's just wild how things were even like that guy doesn't even, he'll never know that not that he told me, and that without that I wouldn't even be on these industry stages. Like I
Wow.
very well could be friends with the owner of the company that he used to work for.
That's amazing.
It's just, yeah.
There is something about that, like what we've touched on in the last few minutes that I think really speaks to a lot of beautiful ways that, just people connect and the impact much later on of like small things. That's so incredible. It's been really cool to have this conversation, and I love that. I gosh, that's kind of all the questions that I have. But what we do have is a tradition of the previous guest gets an opportunity to ask a question to the next guest, and we continue on the opportunities that way. So Kendall was our previous guest, and she asked, and I'm really excited to to hear your response to this. If you could pick a new career, what would it be? Where would you go? Because it, I, going back to what you said earlier about the diving into it from at least until I'm 25, I'm going to be putting my all into this. And if it goes bankrupt at that point, then I'll do something different. But it seems like a foreign thought for you to be doing anything else. So tell me about that. What do you think that you would be doing?
I mean, I think that, for me, it was a matter of like, I always knew that I wanted to like have my own company. Like that was never a question. That was always something that I knew just growing up and kind of seeing my dad have a small business, and kind of, that's just it was what I knew. It's what I grew up with. It was kind of like, I just thought that, you just work a lot and that's just like part of it. You don't know any different. And so I always knew that. But if I were to kind of the easy thing would be to just be like, oh, I would just do this other company. And so,
Sure.
but to be more, to give it some more thought, I think that, one of the things, one of the things that I want to do slash I think I could do is teaching. Like I think that,
Okay.
one of the things that one of the goals that I have is eventually to teach at Maryville, our old
I love it.
college, um, and and teach personal finance, or entrepreneurship or something like that. And I don't mean like I want to be a full-time professor. I
Mhm.
just mean more a matter of like teach a class or two. Like I had a professor, I don't know if you had the same one, but he was Schwab was his
Yes.
last name,
Yep. Principles of
and it
business
was like,
management.
yeah, and it was kind of like, the word on the street was like this guy has a ton of money and, doesn't even get paid to do this. He's
Mhm.
just kind of doing it. And so that would be kind of the approach that I would take is if you want me to teach a couple classes, like I'll do it, but I'm gonna do it the way that I want to teach the class.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to teach like textbook principles. I want it to be like an actuality here.
Yeah.
Like this is how you actually need to do it versus let me just bury you in this textbook like everybody else does that was written
Mhm.
10 years ago. And so that's what I would do. And I think that, that is one of my, legitimate goals is to do it and to use the money. But what I plan on doing though is not saying I'll do it for free. What I plan on doing is saying that, like I want you to pay me, but then my plan is to then take that money and then invest it right back into college, but be able to determine where I want it to go. So it's
Yes.
kind of like,
Okay.
you know, I want to put this salary towards, upgrading the computers in the study
Yeah.
lounge, like, or let's put it in the, athletics or whatever. Like, I think that
Unlimited printing
there's,
for everybody.
yeah, like something,
Yeah.
you kind of figure out what it is that you feel like would make the biggest difference. And then, kind of putting it towards there. So that's what I would do.
I love that. I think that that would be a great move, and I love to see it in the future. I can't wait to for that to come to fruition. That'll be awesome. Well, yeah, that's great. Also, a little about me. The single worst grade I got on any test ever at Maryville College was in Clay Schwab's class. I walked out of thaw and I almost, like, threw up on the steps. It was, like, one of the worst experiences ever, and I ended up doing okay. I ended up getting, like, a B plus, like, in the class, but like, couldn't comprehend. I was like, "Oh my gosh. I'm I'm gonna lose everything." It was awful. It makes me nervous thinking about it right now, but it was so funny. Well, Wesley, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Any closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
I think that, ultimately it's a matter of, we all get to choose, we might not necessarily get to choose how much time we have, you know, on the planet or any of that stuff. But, every day we get to choose how we want to look at it. And I think that, as you're listening here and you're going about your day or whatever it is that you're doing right now, I think it becomes a standpoint of remember that, you get to choose how you look at the world and you can either make it a better place or not. And, hopefully you make it a better place.
Nice. One driveway at a time.
Exactly.
Love it.
Spray and pray right there.
It's a perfect. Awesome. Well, that's going to conclude episode 28 of When I Was Your Age. Thank you guys so much for making this a part of your day, and we'll see you in the next one.